All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Student Voices session. So we did have a little change in the lineup. So if you were here earlier today, I am Araz, and I will be your moderator, or I will be the moderator for this session. And we have some Quizlet students here with us today. So we'll give everyone a moment to come in, get settled. Okay. Feel free to drop in the chat where you are from and what subject you teach. You know what? Actually, if you can also include what grade you teach, that would be helpful. We can put some of this information into context with our students. Fourth grade. These guys are a little older than fourth grade. Fifth grade, nice. 7th through 12th. Oh, that's a range. High school, university. Ooh, this chat's moving fast. Okay. Nice. Oh, I love seeing all the elementary teachers in here. This is what you have to look forward to. Nice. 8th grade, middle school, my people. Okay. Very nice. All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'll do a quick little introduction of myself in case you haven't met me earlier in the day. And if you have been in one of my sessions earlier, then sorry, you're going to get some repeat information. So my name is Araz. I am the teacher education manager here at Quizlet, and I am actually a former middle school and high school English teacher. I spent 17 years in the classroom, and I actually just left in January, so I am fresh out of the classroom. So I'm here with Andy, Lena, Sydney, and Evelyn today. These are all Quizlet users and students with a lot of great things to say. I love this session because as teachers, we work with students all the time and we get to know them, but sometimes we don't really hear their authentic voices because, we're in a position of power and with grading and all that stuff, sometimes we don't get to hear all of the good things that they have to say or they may want to say. So this is a nice safe space for you to ask questions and really get that authentic student voice. Okay? So I will kick it off to our students to introduce themselves, and then I will open up with a few questions, and then we will open up the Q&A and you can start asking away. All right. Okay. So if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lena, and I'm from New York. I just finished high school, and I am a daily Quizlet user. I use it a lot when I study new languages, and also learning new vocabulary for like English and things like that. And I'm really excited to be on here and just talk about my experience using Quizlet.
Hey everyone, my name is Andy. I am about to go into senior year of high school at Ravenscroft, which is in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been using Quizlet for about 6 years, going on 7 since middle school, so I've used it for a while. I've also used it for English vocab quizzes. I've used it for science tests, history tests, economics tests, you name it. I use it. I use it every week when I'm in school. And I'm just really excited to be on this panel, and I'm excited for this opportunity.
Hi, my name's Evelyn. I am currently in 11th grade, and I've been using Quizlet off and on for the past maybe 4 years, and I quite enjoy the flexibility of it, so I can definitely say I like Quizlet. And I'm excited to be here, answer questions.
Hi everyone, my name's Sydney Robertson. I am from the Cypress, Texas area, but I go to school in downtown Houston. I go to Performing Arts High School. I go there for theater, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity and answer all your questions. So yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, so the questions today are going to be broken up into 3 sections at first when I ask the questions, and then once we open up the Q&A, feel free to ask any questions that come up. So we'll start off talking about mental health, and then we'll talk a little bit about study habits and workflow, just general life of a student, and then we will go into some questions about Quizlet specifically. So I'll start off with the first question, and students, go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself. And, like I said, if someone else is talking, well, we're going to treat this like a classroom setting, and we will figure it out as we go. All right. So thinking about mental health, how do you manage stress during increased study periods, such as finals week or midterms? Are there specific strategies that you use to stay calm and focused? I know especially as, high school seniors, rising seniors, or people who just graduated high school, those last few weeks, finals season can be very, very stressful. I've seen schools do different things to try to alleviate stress, but I'm sure you guys have some strategies that are in your back pocket. So we'd love to hear about those.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of stressful times that I've encountered, especially, like going through college application season. So what I try to do is use a Pomodoro method. I think that helps me ground in that I have to take breaks when I approach, having a lot of work and burnout. I think another thing is just being knowing that I have time and being able to socialize with friends, I guess in between things, and just partitioning my days to make sure that I have a schedule, but I also factor in fun events and things. And just being able to talk to my teacher or things like that during lunchtime, or even just doing self-care. I think that's really important for me. And I guess it's a lot of people and experiences I value a lot, and I think those get me through times when there's a lot of things thrown at me.
Nice. Yeah, leaning on the people around us is always a really helpful tool. At the beginning, you mentioned the Pomodoro method. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, the Pomodoro method, there's a lot of different variations, but it's basically when you study for a set amount of time and you have a break for a set amount of time. So there's 60-10, which is 1 hour study and 10-minute break. I personally like 25, I think, or 25-5, which is study for 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5 minutes.
Awesome. I love that. Any other students like to add to that?
I could talk about that, just because my experience is a bit different. So I find during finals, my escape is my theater classes, because I take academics in the morning for only 3 hours because we operate on a block schedule. And so I feel like through finals week, that has been my sort of escape, is doing those classes. But a big proponent that I do during finals week at home, is sort of making sure that my dinner time is just my time to sort of watch my favorite TV show or anything like that, to really make sure that I'm having that me time before I go into studying again or filling out homework or doing anything like that. Especially as you go, I'll be a senior next year, so I've been taking a lot of higher level classes. And so I found that that's very important for me to sort of schedule out an hour or two each day to really do what I want to do and have my alone time through that as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. It's always important to carve out time and to block off time where you just essentially shut your brain off and allow it to reset. Like one of those old sayings where they say, everything will work better if you just shut it down and restart it, including yourself. Okay. Very nice. All right. So one question I have, like I said, I am a former teacher, and I know that a lot of schools have mental health resources in place. But my question is, how effective do you find the mental health resources that are provided by your school or university? And considering we have an audience full of teachers and administrators and, just educators in general, what suggestions do you have? What improvements could be made to make the mental health resources in schools better or more relevant to students? Because oftentimes as teachers or adults, we're not always in tune with what students really need. We think we know what you need, but it doesn't always align.
Yeah, I think what my school does, and I think it's a great idea, they just started it doing a couple of years ago, is they started bringing in therapy dogs. to come in during our free periods. So they'd bring in a few service dogs. We work with a nonprofit organization to bring them in, especially during finals week, to kind of alleviate that stress that we may all have. And I found that to be very helpful. Beforehand, like in the mornings, they just kind of give us like posters or recommendations over emails, which didn't really help as much. But I do think the therapy dogs was something that was a huge improvement, and I think that has definitely helped. I see a bunch of students go to the quad for these dogs. I'm still at a bit of a smaller school with only, like 500 or so students in our high school, but we all love, petting and relaxing with those 6 therapy dogs during our free time.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. That makes me want to go back into a school setting just so I can have some puppy time. Nice. All right. So moving on into just study habits and workflow. Okay. So how important is it how important is your study environment to your productivity? So what kind of environment do you find most conducive to studying, and how do you create that environment? I know it's, changed over the years. I know students used to like study in libraries and in like coffee shops a lot, but now more and more with tech tools and everything being in the palm of our hand, study environments are changing. So what kind of study environment works best for you, and what do you do to create that study environment?
I tend to study in my room. This is probably the case for a lot of other people, I imagine. But one thing I have found to be very constructive in bringing that mindset of work and focus is, especially if you're working in your room, to have 2 separate spaces, to have a leisure space and a workspace. And this is why I've begun having 2 desks. I have one desk that is specifically for schoolwork and another desk that is for creative work or whatever else I may be doing. That to sort of compartmentalize, um, and music, really, or ambient videos, uh, mixes to fit specific moods. I've been studying online for so long that I have a specific page on my Notion planner with tags for specific, like, ambient playlists for extremely specific situations. So like morning study, night study, one tends to be just so perfect for the moment. And having that auditory repetition for me at least is um, very helpful in getting into that work state. And that's why I sort of stash these away for so many different scenarios.
I love that. I would love to see like a sneak peek of your Notion planner. I feel like it would be so organized and just really like motivate you to go in and study. Yeah, having those separate spaces is really important. I remember when I was younger, I used to like sit on my bed and study. It felt comfortable for me, and my parents, it would drive them crazy, and they would make me get up and like sit at a desk and say, this is a designated place for studying. This is a designated space for sleeping. And so it's really nice to, like you said, compartmentalize and draw those lines. And I love that you talked about music as well. With my students, I would let them listen to music as long as they weren't reading a text for the first time, but I would always tell them that it had to be music that didn't have any lyrics, and they would have to like go in and find instrumental versions of the songs that they were listening to. And it was always funny to hear them come through their headphones of like what types of music they were listening to and just using the instrumental version. Very nice. Okay. And you did talk about repetition. So just to touch on this, and any one of you can answer here. So do you believe that studying for long hours of time is more beneficial, or just focusing on the quality, like short study sessions or longer drawn out study sessions that may not be as high quality?
I think for me, what's important is just having like short but productive study sessions. Like I wouldn't want to trade off productivity simply for the fact that I am sitting at my desk more because I think that's just not a great use of my time, and um I feel like I tend to lose focus after like an hour or two. So it's like more important for me to like have those short bouts of breaks in between, as I mentioned earlier, and just trying to be like as maximally productive of my time. But if I'm just sitting there for like 2 hours and I'm just staring at the page, I would just feel so terrible. I'd be like, what am I even doing? So
Yeah, I definitely get that. Uh, I think for me, it's a bit of a combination of the two. Because I've found that I can work for very long periods of time on end. This might not be the case for everyone, but when I have designated bite-sized chunk activities, because they're so short, every time you go through one, it's a bit of a dopamine hit. And when your focus kind of resets like that, it helps you work longer, if that makes any sense. I've tried to take advantage of this in my own studying to sort of have very, very designated and clear bite-sized chunks lessons of, okay, what exactly is it that I'm trying to accomplish in this amount of time? And when you get there, maybe your focus resets, maybe it doesn't. But if that works, it is really great for longer sessions. And if it doesn't work, then you can listen to yourself and you can listen to your state enough to know that you need a break. And then it's a lot more productive than just forcing yourself to sit in a chair for like 2 hours and be like, learn this thing, all of it. It's not, when it's too big, it's not achievable.
I think to add on to that quickly, I agree. I think shorter amounts of time I find to be more productive, and instead of like the longer periods of time. Usually what I do is I don't really have a designated place where I study. I usually like study at one place for like 30 minutes, then I move somewhere else to kind of reset my focus. That's just for me. It drives some of my friends crazy, but that's just kind of how I study. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll study at a coffee shop, or maybe I'll study at this table, just kind of wherever there's free room. It just helps me being in different environments to study, so I'm not used to one. I know many other people want that one designated study space. I'm just kind of I need the new environments.
Nice. I like that. I like that changing environments and kind of resetting. So thinking about all these different ways that you study and breaking information into bite-sized pieces and, changing your environment, what are things that you feel that teachers can do to help your studying and workflow? So if you were to tell your teachers, hey, this really works for me, it probably works for other students as well, what would you like them to know?
Yeah, no, I can reference that. So I'm a big proponent of asking my teachers questions a lot. I feel like that's really helped me learn more and really retain information by asking them and asking them to help me and work through different problems. And so I feel like for me, and I feel like this is for a lot of students as well. It really helps when I ask my teachers to provide like extra worksheets or extra like practical paper that I can use or go through, or like other practice problems that I could use to review for a test or a quiz. I'm really a big proponent for like paper review, because I just love to handwrite things and I feel like I retain things better that way. But extra practice has always been a big thing I ask my teachers, because there's so much you can learn and work through before a test or a quiz, because it always sucks when you get to a quiz and you don't know how to do a problem. But if you practiced it beforehand, it's easier for you to know how to do it. And so that's what I feel like I would really ask teachers to do, and just be willing to answer any questions, and be welcoming when it comes to questions as well.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, I think another thing is just like like following up on that point by Sydney, like I don't know why, but I really like just like physically touching, like I guess just like assignments that are given to me. Like sometimes my brain just gets a bit fried with like looking at the screen so much, especially with all like the digitized technology that we have. So like sometimes when I'm finalizing a draft for an essay, I like printing it out, marking it up, and then doing the changes on my computer screen, like after I've done it on paper, because I feel like that just, gives myself like a good headspace. And another thing is with like the music part, um, like I don't really like music when I study. So sometimes like my teachers would just play it for everyone. And I think that like that kind of distracts me. So like what my teacher does pretty well is that he gives us the option to do so. So like either you can put on your headphones and just, do like listen to your own music or things like that. But personally I just really like silence or, you know, white noise when I study.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that for the music part. Sometimes when teachers play the music, especially like I find music really helpful for math class because I'm not reading something, so it doesn't really confuse me if there are lyrics or not. For math, I can listen to music with lyrics. I mean, I like country. I don't know if we have any country fans, but I really like Zach Bryan and Morgan Wallen. But I usually listen to that only for math and in some other classes like English, even if it's just only instrumental. Sometimes it can still kind of bother me just since I just need that white noise. So kind of having the option of headphones I find really helpful. And if you're teaching like middle school or younger grades, then some students might abuse that. But usually when you get to junior and senior year, I found that most students just they listen to music and get their work done, where that's where I find it most beneficial.
Yeah, I remember seeing like an increase in student work when I would allow them to listen to music using their headphones. I would make them put their phone down, like phone face down on the desk, and I would tell them like pick a playlist and stick with it. You know what I mean? If you don't like it, you're stuck with it for the period. I don't want you handling your phone at all. But I would definitely see an increase in production when I would allow students to listen to music. So I really like that. Um, I I wanted to touch on some of you guys talked about having paper copies or like hard copies of assignments. And I remember hearing this in my classroom a lot too. And students would tell me like something, it doesn't feel like a real assignment unless I get a hard copy. Like I would post things in Google Classroom and sometimes I would get a really low response rate. And then I would, in a different period, I would hand out the same assignment and get a higher response rate. And so I thought that was really interesting that you all touched on that. Um, if you are a Quizlet user, we do have the ability to print a lot of the materials now, which is really nice, like with like practice tests and whatnot. So I encourage you to use those features if you are a hard copy type person. All right, so let's go ahead and start shifting into some Quizlet questions. Before we get started with the Q&A, I do see some great questions coming up in the Q&A. And for the audience, if you do have questions, please use that Q&A feature and not the chat box. But before we get started, if we can just go through and if each of you guys can tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to Quizlet and how you use it on a daily basis. And you don't have to go into too much detail here. We will talk more about it in the questions, but just a very general overview of how you were introduced to it and how you use it on a daily basis. And we can go in the same order that we started.
Yeah, so I was introduced to Quizlet probably when I was in like ninth grade, and my teacher introduced me to it because it was like an English class, and every single week we had a bunch of vocabulary to memorize. I remember that was like a study tool that she recommended for us. And in terms of what I use, I really like the flashcard functionality. Mainly just use it for vocabulary for things that really just need to be like hardcore memorized. And also use it for, I guess, like active memory exercise. So, going back to the decks like a week from now for like a final exam or something. And I use it for like the interactive features as well, like the game. So yeah.
Yeah, I was introduced to Quizlet in middle school, about sixth grade, maybe fifth grade. I don't really remember that far back, but it's been a while. And I started really using their Write tool, which is now not now Learn. They still have the Write feature, but I use Learn more often now, and the flashcard feature. I would use it for foreign languages, especially for my Latin class, English classes for vocabulary quizzes, science tests, and history tests, which I still use it for the same reasons today. And I actually did a live demo walkthrough just about an hour before. So I think there's also a recording you could watch on that, on kind of like my exact flow of how I do it. But I really like using QChat now and the study guide feature to really streamline that process.
I believe I was introduced to Quizlet about 3 or 4 years ago. My high school is online, and I've only ever gone to online high school. But it was introduced to me for a history class to remember dates and events and stuff. And even though the flashcards are the core feature, I tend to use the learn feature the most. I personally, flashcards don't really work very well for me because they're not very interactive, and that's why I like the learn capability better, because uh, even when you try to write something as a response and it's just barely off, it'll recognize that you're right. And I've always found that to be super impressive. But it's interactive. I need to be able to answer with my own words, and that's why I like Quizlet's learn feature, is because of how flexible it is in that regard.
Yeah, so I was introduced to Quizlet in middle school. I want to say like sixth grade. So I've been using it for a long time. It was a big part of, I use the learn feature similar. I use the learn feature a lot. Because I'm a big proponent of like different mediums of learning and like how it's able, like you're able to do so many different things with it. I really like that because of like through learning AP Psych, like the maintenance rehearsal of it all and really being able to really retain the information has helped. I used the flashcards a little bit this past year because of the psychology course I was taking, and it was essentially just terms, and I needed to know those terms in preparation for a quiz or a test. But those are like the two main features I use, and I found like through the different mediums of learning with Quizlet, I've really been able to retain my information better. And a lot of my teachers will use like Quizlet Live. I use that a lot in pre-AP biology and with different like genotypes and stuff like that. And it was very interactive, which I loved as well.
Nice. That's cool that a lot of you were introduced to Quizlet through your teachers. I was actually introduced to Quizlet through my students, and they would come up to me before a test or for other classes or whatnot, and they would tell me, oh, I used Quizlet and I studied, and I got this and this, and I started thinking about, I'm like, what is this Quizlet? At first, I thought it was like a testing tool, and then once I started playing with it, I was like, oh my gosh, this has so many great features, and then I started using it in my class all the time. I too loved the live feature. It was so fun. And as a teacher, it's so nice to be able to quickly come up with a game, especially when you sometimes have like 5 or 10 minutes at the end of class where it's like dead time and you don't want it to be a free-for-all. It's a really great little tool to have in your back pocket. Nice. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the Q&A. So again, audience members, if you do have any questions, please post them in the Q&A, and our students will answer them for you. So Elizabeth, you asked, how do you react when sets contain incorrect information? Okay. So this is something that does happen because our sets are user generated. Most of our sets are correct, but every once in a while, a student will upload something and some information on the set will be incorrect. So how do you handle that? And any one of you guys can take the answer. Don't make me call on you like a teacher.
I could answer that because I've experienced that quite a lot with my history classes, especially preparing for like world history and like US history and everything like that. But I feel because I'm a big proponent of like sharing study resources with others. Like I love to help other people. If we can all do great, like that's, and especially in a class where it's hard, I'm a big proponent of like sharing out the information, like, hey, you could study this to help. And so there are times where I find that they are wrong. However, I will edit it or I'll make sure I'll create like copy it and create my own and send it out with the correct information or notify other people that it's not the correct information, so that everyone gets the right information to prepare for the whatever we're preparing for, just to know the content better. Because I mean, I could be like, oh, I'll fix it for myself, but it's better if I fix it for everyone else as well. Because we all do great in a class together. And so yeah, that's what I'll edit the information, or I'll create my own and edit it through there as well.
Nice. Yeah, that community aspect of Quizlet is one of its best features. It's, everyone comes together to study, to learn. And the more that, people create sets, edit sets, and work together, the stronger it becomes. And as a teacher, that's something that I would notice sometimes too. When I would go into a set, it wasn't necessarily that it was incorrect, but it was just, that teacher was teaching it a little differently than I would be teaching it. And so that's exactly what I would do as well. I would go in, I would take the set, make a copy, and then upload my own information. I think maybe a handful of times I ended up having to create sets from scratch for like a very niche assignment, but more often than not, I would just take sets and copy them and edit them. And that's a really big time saver for teachers and for students as well. All right, so next question from Kimberly. I wonder, how many of you create your own Quizlet sets, or do your teachers have them in their classrooms? So if your teacher has a Quizlet class, how many of your teachers upload sets versus you having to create your own sets?
So for me, I have to personally create my own sets, because I don't know, maybe the curriculum is very niche or something, but I usually just have to enter in terms, and then and then it just auto populates, but it's not like we have a Quizlet classroom, I guess. So I guess that's one of the drawdown to it, but it's usually pretty fast because I think it's just that there's no set created, but there are terms from other sets are created that I just auto populate onto.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Sorry. Usually I create a lot of sets from scratch, especially for vocabulary, for Latin. Sometimes I'd make them and share with my classmates. We take turns. It just depends. Teachers use, I know in my middle schools when a lot of teachers would make the sets, just to make sure that that information was accurate. Now it's mainly on students to make those Quizlet sets. They do provide us some other study guide materials or presentations, but then we usually make those sets individually. And usually we just share it with friends. And sometimes what we do is we actually sit down with the teacher and say, here's a Quizlet set that we created. I just want to make sure that this is all accurate and this is the right stuff that we should be studying. And more times than not, the teacher is very happy to go over it quickly and make sure that all the information is accurate.
Fantastic. I love that you take turns with friends creating sets. Yeah, that's definitely the right way to study together, and having your teachers go over it too. Yeah, it's that's so much easier as a teacher for a student to come in with something like a set and say, hey, can you check this, versus coming in and saying that, what am I supposed to study? And so that's a great way to approach it. I like that. Okay. All right, let's see. Next question. Does it bother you that you leave your LMS when teachers use platforms like Quizlet? That's a good question.
I feel like I can imagine where that question is coming from. That might be more of an issue for younger students who are not as familiar with the internet. But I think at around, I would imagine at around our age, 11th, 10th, I'm not uncomfortable with it at all, but that's just because I've probably been using the internet a little longer than most people would be comfortable with. But there are things in place to ensure the safety of students online, and whether or not people are using those and whether or not people are comfortable with allowing that possibility is, a very personal decision.
Do you guys feel like students get all mixed up and confused when your teachers ask you to move into Quizlet, or are most students able to like quickly scan the QR code or put in the code and get started right away? Like, are there a lot of tech issues in your classrooms that come up when your teachers move to a different platform, or more or less does everyone get it pretty quickly?
I find in my experience that students get it quickly. I usually have like 50,000 tabs open at once, so it doesn't really bother me as much. And whenever a student, like our teachers use many different platforms, and we're all pretty familiar with them, very familiar with Quizlet by now. So moving on to a different website or platform doesn't bother us.
Nice, yeah, especially post-pandemic, I feel like students are so tech savvy. I would get really nervous about certain things, introducing them to my class, and then before I even got through the directions, everybody was logged in and ready to go. And I was like, oh, that was quick. All right, so we have a few questions that are fairly similar. What is your favorite aspect of Quizlet, or what activity in Quizlet has been the most effective for you? Any one of you can take this.
I think what I really like is I think it's like that game, the matching game that I really like. I use it a lot for vocabulary, so like if it's like for languages too and vocabulary. So I like, make sure I have a touch screen like iPad or something and just try to like beat my high score. It's pretty fun and I feel like it makes me want to like learn it so I could do it faster every time. And for some reason, like it helps so much and just like helping my brain make the connection between the word and the definition term.
Yeah, Match is one of the games that students can launch on their own and play. And so that gamification of it definitely makes learning more engaging and more fun. Nice. All right. So do any of the panelists have experience with longer class periods, longer than 1 hour per class? Do you need brain breaks in the middle of class when it's longer than an hour? So if any of you are on a block schedule.
Yeah, I'll take that question. So every single class is an hour and 30 minutes. And so especially being in like high school, it has been harder for me to really pay attention. When it comes to past the hour mark a little bit, which is why I feel like as a teacher, a lot of my teachers will do like interactive activities, whether it be like escape room or let's draw this character that you did in this book. One of my English class last year, we had a whole D&D unit, so Dungeons and Dragons unit, which connected to the like Grimm's fairy tales. And so the last 3 weeks of that semester, or that cycle rather, we played D&D in class. And so I spent my hour and 30 minutes doing Dungeons and Dragons, but like I had to write like a plot line. And of course there was academic stuff with that as well. But I feel that's also might be like an art school thing too. But a lot of my teachers will do that and sort of a way to keep kids interactive. And our final for that class as well was like a murder mystery between chemistry and English. And so we use like science and then online escape rooms with like different books as well to sort of interact the two, because they know that we're doing a lot. We do a lot during the day. We take academics, we do art, and then we still have rehearsal at night. Like normally I don't leave school till like 8 o'clock, and so they try and accommodate that with more interactive activities as well.
That sounds so fun. My like teacher brain is kicking on and I'm like trying to think about lesson plans to do with, things like D&D or different games. Those are the things that make me definitely miss the classroom. All right, so we have a question from Yvonne. What improvements would you like to see in the Quizlet product? Is there anything that you're like, oh man, that would be great as a student to have this feature that we don't have right now? Oh, great. Looks like our product is perfect. No, I'm kidding. There's always improvements that can be made. But yeah, even if as teachers you have any improvements that you would like to see, go ahead and drop those in the chat. We always love hearing feedback and improving the product. All right. Let's see. Oh, I like this one. What is your favorite kind of homework assignment? This is from Elizabeth. No
Probably
homework is favorite
worksheets.
homework?
Probably worksheets. Just because, like, it when you finish a worksheet, isn't that just such a good feeling? I don't know how to describe that, but because you write on it and you feel much more in control of your learning when you have a question and you can answer it. And it's very simple, but it works. And that's why I always enjoy like test quiz questionnaire type worksheets that just have like maybe 15 questions. They don't need to be long form answer questions. There's just something about it. I don't know.
Nice. Yeah, that sense of completion, definitely. Again, as an English teacher, I remember students would bring like an essay or a paragraph they'd written, and then we talk about, okay, well, how can we improve this? I'd be like, no, I don't want to improve it anymore. I want to be done. Just tell me what I need to do to be done. And so, yeah, I can definitely see how worksheets, it's like you finish it and you can put it away. Nice. All right, so we have a couple of minutes here left. One question that I did want to ask, and each of you can just take a moment to answer here. What is one thing that you feel like you would really like your teachers to know? And this can be about anything, okay? So just as a student, what's one piece of information that you feel like would be really valuable for today's teachers to hear, and take that and use it in their classes in the upcoming school year?
I think one thing is this like maybe like I guess just like being more appreciative of teachers. Like I know that sometimes as students like we might seem very much like arrogant or like when we don't understand a concept, I'm gonna get pretty frustrated, but it's not really directed towards the teacher because obviously like they put in a lot of effort and hard work for like the curriculum. So I think just like for the teacher, from like the student standpoint, like I want teachers to know that we genuinely appreciate their hard work and things. And sometimes it doesn't really show through because of just like how frustrated we are. So I guess just like that thing that like teachers take away.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know that a lot of me and my friends like we can be stressed at sometimes, especially near exams. And I do want you to know that a lot of students do appreciate what you do. And especially now, like lately, I'm trying to, just have like small talk with my teachers, ask them, how they're doing before I like ask them a question or jump right in. So I'm trying to do that as a student to improve myself because I do appreciate what all the teachers do. It's something that is really amazing. And one other thing that I also want to add, and this is kind of a different topic, and this kind of answers the question that Araz asked before. But something that I do like are video assignments, which I know we don't have a whole lot of them. But if when teachers do video assignments, especially for reflections, I find them to be much easier than having to write out like a long paragraph. So if it's something that's not necessarily a formal assignment, having that video option, I definitely appreciate. And I wish some more teachers knew that as well, if that's an option that they're willing to consider.
Video assignments are great for building public speaking skills. I will also say that, especially since public speaking is very, very typically a class at any point in high school. I do want to take a bit of a different direction with my answer. This generation is growing up with so many screens. Both Gen Z and Gen Alpha are getting screens just shoved in their faces all the time. And one thing I want to tell teachers everywhere is the less you can put us in front of those, the better. Because we have more stamina when we don't have to be in front of a screen for hours at a time, whether that be for studying or for assignments. The more resources we can get for studying away from technology, I think if it's feasible, for something like Quizlet is the benefits are higher because of the way that the platform works and how it helps with learning. But if there's something simpler if there's something you can get away with giving on paper, do it. And we will appreciate it because then we'll have more brain power.
And very quickly, like going off that, like the away from the screens as well, I feel like a big thing that I've always wanted to tell my teachers, I just sometimes forget or don't really reference it as much. We love, like me as a student, I love when like I can tell when teachers are really interested in what they're teaching and it really shows. And so I love when I just like when the teachers just talk and they're just like giving a lecture or something and you can just tell like they want you to learn it and they're willing to sort of help you through that. And so I feel like it's so beneficial to us as students to see teachers who really care for their students and really want them to succeed and really are willing to help them along the way as well. And so just listening to my teacher, like my history teacher, she is one of my favorite teachers because you can tell she's so well versed in what she does. And so listening to her talk is like I could it makes my hour and 30-minute classes feel like 30 minutes because she's so willing to help us. And I feel like teachers just need to hear like we actually do listen to what you say and like we do take it into account. And a lot of the times like we want to hear you talk and we want to hear you like do the lesson and all the things. And so I feel like that's always been a big part. Like I love about school. Like
Awesome. That's all so wonderful to hear. And I'm so glad that we asked that question at the end. It's such a beautiful close to all of our teachers who are starting off their new school year. Teachers, we did not prompt them to say any of those things. We were thinking that we would get feedback about teachers giving too much homework or not understanding student schedules and all the demands. That's what I was expecting. So thank you to the students. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. Thank you for the teachers for being here and asking such wonderful questions. Our keynote session is kicking off. So if you would like to head over into the Zoom lobby and join our keynote. And again, thank you so much to our students. Okay. Bye, everyone.